Hi everybody. Today we're going to go through local storage and see what we get out of that. So local storage is a way to save information for within a user's browser so that it will show up again the next time that the user reloads on that browser. They can close the browser, bring it back to the same page, and the same information should appear. Our objectives for today are to understand what local storage is, identify when to use local storage, save information, view or change what is there, retrieve information, and use JSON to encode and decode object data for storage. So as I said, local storage is a way to store information within a user's browser. It goes in key value pairs, so you get to give that set of data a name, and then that's how you get to grab it back. It's worth noting as well that within a given browser, a given site has its own local storage information set up. We'll see that when we look at how to access that data, look at it, and change it within a browser. So local storage methods. We've got the local storage.set item, and then you put in the key that you want and the value, and that places data into local storage. We've got the local storage.get item, and we only give it the key that time because that retrieves the data that was this value from local storage. We've got the remove item, which I don't demonstrate here, but it works the same way, except that what it does is removes the entry from local storage, essentially deletes it. Then we can clear it to remove all data from the local storage for that site. So here we've got an example of setting a value. This will save the name countRugen, which is going to be stored in the username variable, into local storage under the key user. So somewhere we'll have set this value. Maybe we'll have taken user input to grab it. Say var username equals countRugen. Local storage.set item user, so that's the key. When we go to retrieve it, we'll pull it against that user key. And what are we saving? We're saving username, the value within that variable. So it's going to save countRugen into the key user. Here's how we view and change local storage in Chrome. You can right-click on the page, choose Inspect, and then you'll see a window that looks something like this. Sometimes it comes down on the bottom. Find that Application tab, choose the Local Storage section, and click on your site, whichever one it's displaying on, and you should see the information right here. And you can use this X button to delete that item. Once you've selected it, you can usually click in there and actually change the values that are there, which should tell you something as a developer that you don't want to rely on that data being exactly what you expect it to be. And then we can look at it in Firefox. It looks a little bit different. It's very similar, but instead you're looking for the storage section. Here's the local storage, and then you click on that, and you've got the data shows up down here. And you can do all those same kinds of things to it there. All right, so let's actually hop on over to Replit and take a look at this right here. Okay, no, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. Here we go. So if I say var username equals countRugen, and then I say local storage.set item user username. And then I'm just going to alert done just to show that we've actually done it. It's done. And now if I right click and I inspect, if it'll work in this section, I go here, application, local storage, and it's probably this McLean storage demo. User is countRugen. Okay, and again I can click that and delete it. Okay. Okay, to retrieve an item, we say var username equals local storage.get item user. Okay, if you're using a global variable or have already declared username, yeah, you could leave out the var keyword and it would work out just as well. So let's hop on over and take a look at that. So I've done this. I'm going to run this again to put it in there. Okay, I've got user as countRugen. So now I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to say local storage .getItem user. I'm just going to alert username so that we can see that it got it. Count Rogan. So it grabbed it from there. There's nothing else in that code. So there's a complication though. What if that key doesn't appear in the local storage? What if I hadn't already put it there? Then what happens? Let's take a look and find out. So I'm going to clear out that. Then I'm going to run it again. And we'll see that what happens down here in the console is what should happen in the console. I'm going to launch this. Oh, it just posts the null. There we go. It posts the null. I was expecting an error, but it posts the null. And I can't use that for anything, especially not if I'm trying to use it as an array or to do some more advanced things with it. So that's not going to work. I need to check it and set it to at least the data type that's going to work. So we'll take a look here. We'll say next. So you should always test the results of a local storage grab and check to see if it equals null. So we'd say here, if username equals null, then username equals user. So we're going to typically, you want to set it to a default value. So we'll do that. So keep on going to the wrong window there. If username equals null, that's that special value that means it's nothing, then username equals user. I'm going to let username here, and then I'm going to run, and it now equals user. So it's working the way we expect it to at this point. Okay, so all that works great for strings and numbers, but what about more advanced things, variables with multiple values, like arrays and objects, which we'll get to objects later. That's where we start using JSON. JSON is JavaScript object notation. It's a system for representing object data, including arrays, in a string format to make that data easy to share. So there's a JSON object in JavaScript, and it has two methods that are important. JSON.parse string, which converts JSON data into an object, and my favorite, JSON.stringify object, which converts an object into JSON data. So let's work on converting an array into JSON and store it in local storage. First thing we're going to do is create the data. That depends entirely on how it works for your app. You can have a text box that users are entering things into. You can be grabbing information from external websites, whatever it happens to be. In this case, we're just going to set it up. var mytasks equals an array that includes mowing the lawn, washing the car, build the fence, and watch basketball. And then before we save it, we need to convert it into a JSON string. We say var, no capital V there, sorry about that, var JSON tasks equals JSON.stringify mytasks. And then we're going to save that to local storage. Local storage.setItem tasks is going to be the key, and JSON tasks will be the value. So let's hop on over and take a look at that. Okay, var mytasks equals, we're going to mow the lawn, and then we're going to skip all the way to basketball. Okay. Var JSON tasks, we're going to convert it now into a JSON string, equals JSON.stringify my tasks. And we're going to alert JSON tasks just so we can see what that looks like. It looks a lot like this does. Difference is this is just a string. Okay. So now what we do is we say local storage dot set item tasks JSON tasks. We run that and it shows up here. So now there's a key of tasks with a value of mow lawn and watch basketball. Okay. So when we retrieve JSON data from local storage and then we want to convert it back into the object, we get the value from local storage. var JSON tasks equals local storage.getItem tasks. Second, we want to check that it isn't null. If it is, we're going to set it to the default of an empty, that's empty brackets, left bracket, right bracket. Okay. Otherwise, we're going to assign the stored value to the variable. Else, that's continued from the previous. My tasks equals json.parse JSON tasks. In this case, we're using that global variable up above. Okay. So let's hop on over and take a look at doing that. There we go. So I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to start that as empty. Of our JSON tasks, we're going to grab it out of local storage. And then we're going to check and see if it's null. We're going to remember to put our parentheses around that. And then we're going to set my tasks equal to nothing, which essentially is doing nothing at this point, but that might not be the case if we were running a clear or a reset function to go back to where we started on a day. Otherwise, we're going to say my tasks equals json.parse JSON tasks. And then down here, we're going to alert my tasks. So we know that we're starting with it empty up here. And it knows that it is mow lawn, watch basketball. Notice that those brackets aren't there. Those brackets aren't there because it is helping us by converting the array into a string. That's a JavaScript browser issue. Benefit, feature, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that's grabbing it out. When do we do all this? Well, it's a good idea to have a function for saving and a function for retrieving. Those are things that sometimes have to tweak a little bit. You only want to have to write that code once, makes it easy to maintain. And then you retrieve the data, typically in a window on load. So it's there automatically. You don't have to ask to load it or anything. It just happens. And then you want to save it to local storage with every change of your data. You can have a button to push the save and force it. Most web users don't expect that. They expect it to happen constantly. So let's put it all together. Okay. So I'm going to build a quick little page here that'll do this. Which language am I in? I'm trying to do CSS there. Okay. In my nav, I'm going to put an input type equals text, ID equals txt new task, placeholder equals enter task. And then I'm going to have a button I'm going to call this add task. There are a number of things to do on that. And then I'm going to want to have in my main area, I'm going to close my nav. There we go. And then I'm going to want to have a div ID equals container. Okay. So we'll see that this is here. Add, there's nothing there for that. So I'm going to go back to the start with the use strict. And then var my tasks is going to be nothing. I know that I want to save to local storage. I want to retrieve from local storage. Add a task on the add button. And I want to display. Okay. So let's do these right here. Window onload equals function retrieve is what I'm going to call it. and then I want to display. I'm going to do those as separate functions, one to bring in the data from local storage, one to display my results, because there might be other times when I want to do it. So I'm going to write function retrieve, Json tasks equals local storage dot get item tasks. So I'm grabbing it out of local storage and putting that string that's in there into this JSON tasks. If it's null, then I want to set my tasks to nothing. Otherwise, I want to set my tasks equal to json.parse JSON tasks. That should do it for retrieve. When I save to local storage, I call it save tasks. Var JSON tasks equals not local storage. JSON.stringify my tasks. And then I want to do local storage.setItem tasks JSON tasks. So I've converted that array into a string, and then I push it into tasks here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and set it to add a task on the add button. I don't have much of a way to test when you've got this much to do and not much of a way to test. It's a little bit of a problem. If I'm developing this from scratch for the first time, I'm probably adding a task on the add button first, making sure that that's adding to the array correctly, and then I'd go in and start adding the local storage piece. But I can't test this until I have some data. Okay, so function add task var, so I need that element, txt new task. I want to grab that element because I'm going to do two things. I'm going to get its value, and I'm going to set its value back to an empty string so that they don't have to go and delete it themselves. Document.get element by id txt new task. And I think that's what I said. Input type equals text, id equals txt new task. Okay. Var new task equals txt new task dot value, and then I'm going to say txt new task dot value equals nothing. So there I'm clearing out the text box. Okay. Now I want to add that to the my tasks. My task.push new task, and then I want to display. I want to save, and I want to display. I could create my own individual element and add it, which might have some value, but I'm going to redisplay everything each time. That'll let me reset that index on the thing. Okay. But for now, what I'm going to do is just alert my tasks. I want to be able to test this thing. I've gone too far without testing. See, display is not defined. So I'm going to comment that out for now. Run, new, add, Molon, watch basketball, new. Okay, and it clears out. So things appear to be working that far. Let's go ahead and add in the save tasks, and I should see this change. Run, new one added. I add. It shows up in my array, and maybe it shows up here. There we go. So my save is working. Now I need a display function. You'll see that it thinks there's a problem there because it couldn't display things. Not sure where it ran into that, but that's okay. We'll get there. To display, I want to say, do I have container? Did I make it a thing? I'm going to make my container a global. I could possibly benefit by doing that with my text box as well, because I'm going to grab it maybe in a couple of different cases. For now, I'll just leave it the way it is. So function display for var I equals 0. I'm going to do a for loop so that I know the index of each one, rather than a for of, which would only bounce through them without giving me those numbers, and I might want those numbers. The first thing I actually want to do is clear out the container. I equals 0. I is less than my tasks dot length. I plus plus. Instead of doing a separate, I should do a separate function to get the right element and then put it, but I'm just going to do it all in here. Var el task equals document.create element div el task.inner HTML equals my tasks at I, so I'm grabbing it by its index. If it's 0, it's mow lawn. If it's 1, it's watch basketball, and so on. And then I should also give it a class. Class list.add. That way I'll be able to style it up and maybe grab them if I ever need all of them at once. Container.append child el task. I can go ahead and put display back in my window on load. We'll see if that worked. HTML of null at display. Line 36. Container. 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 I can't set it there because this is that order of events, right? Var container. I'm going to copy that and get rid of all that. So I'm going to declare the variable there, so it's all that. And then the first thing I want to do is, I thought maybe I did that. Oops. All right. So I have to wait for the window to load before I can grab an element. So that's why that happened. It's one to watch out for. And a tough one to debug sometimes if you're not thinking about it. And there they all are. Mow lawn, watch basketball, new one added, go bowling. It's an important thing to do. It's added to the list. It's added over here. Go bowling is there. It did not display because when I add a task, I'm not displaying. Run. There we go, it's added. What else do we need to do? Have lunch. We are ambitious. So it didn't clear out, did it? All those are correct. I'm going to get rid of this alert because it's messing me up. I'm going to run it again. It knows that it's there once. Test. And it's adding it, but it is not clearing it out. Oh, because that needs to be inner HTML. Run. Test 2. There we go. Now it looks like it's just adding it. So there we have it. We have on load, we're able to grab our data and display it. Every time we add something new, we save it and display it. We could throw in the ability to delete, in which case we would save tasks and redisplay every time. So by redoing the whole display every time, we make sure that our indexes are right. So if we put that in as a data set, say eltask.dataset.index equals I, and then We can go back here to elements, and we can see that each of these things, it's all a little weird because of the way this is in the div. They all have an index, data index of 0, 1, 2, and 3. So you can do all kinds of things with that. Gives you a connection between your interface and your array. That data connection is solid that way. Okay. I guess that's it. So once again, going back to our thing here, our objectives. We're to understand what local storage is, placed within a browser. It doesn't work if you change browsers or change computers, but it saves on the same computer under the same browser for the same website. Identify when to use local storage, when we want to save that information between visits to the site. We want to know how to save the information, view or change what's in local storage, grab it out of local storage and use it, and use JSON to encode and decode object data, array data in this case, for storage. So that's it. Thanks, everybody.